Hello and welcome to Revitalize Portland Coalition's Revive and Thrive podcast. So glad you're here. This is the first in a series highlighting the mayor's race for the city of Portland. We'll be asking some tough questions regarding homelessness, crime and safety, housing, the new government structure, and so many more questions. Our first interview is current city council member Mingus Mapps. He'll be answering some tough questions and giving his thoughts on the future of the city. So stick around and enjoy the interview. Mingus, thanks so much for coming on
Of
to
course.
Revitalize Portland Coalition's Revive and Thrive podcast. It's truly a pleasure to have you on and get your perspective on not only where we're at in the city right now, but also the mayor's race upcoming in November. So thanks for taking the time.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for inviting me. This is one of my favorite topics, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to have this conversation.
Our pleasure. So I guess the first question for a lot of us is, what formed your decision to run for the city of Portland's mayor's race? Was it a particular moment, an issue?
Well, it's a moment. I'll tell you, as you know, I've served on council for the past 3.5 years, truly the honor of my life. But we are also coming up on a unique moment with this election. We are changing our form of government for the first time in 117 years. Something which I hope every Portlander appreciates is that, we are not doing a light remodel of the outside of City Hall. This is a profound change of the way City Hall works. Getting this moment right, I believe, is incredibly important. Make the difference between whether or not we thrive as a city moving forward or whether we continue to head in the wrong direction. And frankly, like a lot of Portlanders, I think we've been heading in the wrong direction for the last several years. That's why I'm running. And let me also say this, because it's a question I get all the time. Like, Mingus, why are you running for mayor as opposed to council? You've been a pretty good counselor. We'd love to see you stay in that role.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the praise. But in our new form of government, council is going to really focus on broad policy issues. And the mayor's office is really going to focus on delivering city services. And the thing that really got me into public life is the delivery of basic civil services, water, sewer, roads, parks, police, fire. That's the stuff that I really want to get right. There is no shortage of great ideas in Portland. What we are historically truly terrible at are implementing those ideas. And frankly, I think I have the background and the interest in making the city work again. And that's why I threw my hat in the ring.
Yeah, great. Well, you've always sort of emphasized this need for a well-coordinated government.
Yeah.
And, going down this sort of new path for the structure of the government, how do we make sure that all 24 city bureaus are working together effectively on the commission level?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm actually optimistic about that. Starting on July 1st of this year, we kind of started a pilot project where each member of council handed back the bureaus that we have overseen. And all of our 24 bureaus have been essentially managed on the day-to-day basis by the mayor's office and our city administrator. First, let me say this, as someone who loves the bureau work, that was a painful transition for me. However, I really do see the benefits. I think the mayor was in the newspaper even today or yesterday talking about our strategy for making Old Town safer. And that new strategy includes police. It also includes PBOT. It's going to include a wide range of city bureaus. Frankly, in the past, it's been hard to find that kind of coordination, but even in the pilot phase, I see that happening. I see it being much more effective. And I'll also tell you, I've been on council long enough, and for those of you with long memories, I used to work in the city of Portland, and there have been moments when different city bureaus just literally refused to work together. I used to work over at the Office of Civic Life, and there were city bureaus back 4 or 5 years ago which would literally refuse to attend meetings where other city bureaus were in attendance. And that was just crazy. It hurt service delivery. It was profoundly dysfunctional, and that really needed to end. And that is also one of the reasons why changing our form of government has been so important.
Interesting. Yeah. At one point, you had voiced some skepticism about this change to the city's government structure. What's your current feeling about the new charter, and do you think that there are changes that still need to be made in the future to it?
Well, I'll tell you, you can break the charter reforms that we have in place into two buckets. One is kind of how you go about delivering city services. That lives over in the office of the mayor and the city administrator. And then there's this other big bucket of changes about how we go about electing new members of council. And I'll tell you, we've already talked a little bit about the delivery of basic services, the mayor's office, the city administrator. I see incredible progress there. And then one of the things that, as we turn to that other, you're going to be voting in a very different way. You're going to be doing ranked choice voting. We have more seats. We have multi-member districts involved here. One of the things that you've seen, and this is certainly good, I think there are 118 people running for council right now, so it's much more complicated than it has been. And I'll tell you, as a guy who's out there literally every day talking to voters, we have a lot of work to do to explain to people how democracy works in this town, like literally how you go about, casting your ballot. I think there's no doubt this is a very complicated system. Frankly, I think the electoral system's a little bit overly complicated. I am confident that over time, both Portlanders will learn, and perhaps there are some tweaks that we can do here. But let me also circle back to another concern on the service delivery side. For the past 117 years, the mayor's been a member of council. Now the mayor won't be a member of council, and the mayor won't have a veto. And I really do have this deep concern about the inability of the mayor's office and the city council to kind of talk to each other. If you have the mayor administering policy without actually having some influence over what that policy looks like, that is going to be deeply problematic. Also tells you a little bit about what we're looking for in our first mayor in the new system. Someone who's collaborative, can bring people together, and also lead us to, I think, constructive, sound reforms and policies.
Yeah. Yeah, going along that lines with collaboration, there seems to be a lack of regarding the city and the county and the directions that we're heading in. How do you view the relationship right now? Where can there be strides to be made in that collaboration? Do you see that happening with the current set of the current leadership?
Well, I have good news and I have bad news here. The good news is, the relationship between the city and the county is healthier today than I've seen it in the past 4 or 5 years. I would still describe it as being a profoundly troubled and perhaps even dysfunctional relationship. And that's crucial because there's no way for Portland to thrive if, frankly, the county is not also effective. I think of the city as being basically in the business of sticks and bricks. We do parks, we do roads, we do sewers, we do water, and the county basically provides your human services. What we have gotten much better at the city is kind of taking folks and stabilizing them for a moment and even kind of creating our own social service system. But ultimately, those folks need to be connected to long-term services provided by the county. We are in constant dialogue with our partners over at the county to how to make that system seamless. It's gotten much better than it was a few years ago. But frankly, we can't end the cycle of homelessness if we can't do better than we are doing today. It's my goal as mayor that, every time one of our city workers encounters a Portlander who needs help, especially shelter or mental health services or alcohol and drug services, we can do a warm handoff to our county partners, and those county partners can kind of plug them into housing, plug them into healthcare services, plug them into addiction services. We're doing that not nearly as well as we should, but we're doing it much better than we were 3 years ago. But if that system kind of clogs up and we don't have a partner to kind of take our clients from Portland Street Response or our clients who are currently living in our safe rest villages, frankly, all the work that we're doing at the city to help our most vulnerable neighbors eventually kind of clogs up. And that is frankly why Portland remains where we are today.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the outside impression is that the city of Portland kind of got tired of waiting for action from Multnomah County and started its own sort of broad program to address some of the unsheltered homeless. And
I'll tell you, that impression is absolutely right. But let me also caution people, we did that, but we don't have the resources to do that. That's why the county is our mental health and healthcare providers, partly because of state law and federal law, Those are the folks who receive the federal funds and the state funds to help people with their social services. And what we've been doing right now is frankly not financially tenable.
Yeah.
We can basically maintain the system that we have in place right now for about another year, and then the city really does begin to go bankrupt.
Yeah.
So
Well,
we have to do better.
as a mayor, is there resources or is there any way to sort of influence at least obviously the collaboration between the county and the city, but influence maybe the direction that the county can go in addressing these problems or the Joint Office of Homeless Services?
Well, that's the key. The Joint Office of Homeless Services is where the city and the county come together. One of my great frustrations is the fact that the city hasn't been a little bit of a firmer partner in shaping what the joint office looks like.
Right.
Let me be clear. Number one, the county's job is incredibly difficult. Dealing with mental health services, alcohol and drug addiction services are some of the most difficult human problems that exist on this planet. Do have a deep appreciation for what they are dealing with. However, also one of the reasons why I'm at a stalemate here is I do think there are fundamentally different philosophies at the city and at the county in terms of how you address some of these problems. Famously, the county believes that we should embrace a housing first strategy. And I think that's people who work on my team over at the city, our PBOT workers, our folks who are park rangers or cops or fire folks. They're encountering people who are frankly not ready to move into an apartment. I think we see a need for an interim step before they get into supportive housing. That conversation the county has evolved a lot. And so I applaud them for kind of becoming more flexible in how they design their service and their service delivery system. So what I think really needs to happen is, number one, we need to recognize there's no way for this to work unless the city and the county are good partners.
Sure.
On the other hand, the city also really has to hold the county accountable for meeting people where they actually are, as opposed to an idealized vision of where we hope they would be. And I'll tell you, on the one hand, I think I have a candidate in this race, one who is perhaps not as collaborative with the county as we would need to be in order to have a constructive relationship. And then you see other candidates in this mayor's race who, frankly, I've never seen criticize the county at all. I think I've kind of have tried to walk this middle path where I try to hold the county accountable while I also try to be constructive in that conversation. And I think that's one of the reasons why we move forward.
Okay. And you had mentioned the housing first policy, which the Multnomah County has adopted as their sort of strategy for unsheltered persons. Do you think that's the right strategy moving forward?
Ultimately, we want to move people into housing, but I'll tell you what I see. I'm their PBOT guy. So I'm your guy who's responsible for maintaining our sidewalks, our parking spaces and whatnot. And the folks that, my workers encounter on our sidewalks and living in RVs are so challenged that frankly, they are not ready to move into an apartment right away. We actually find that safe rest village, basically moving folks into a tiny house with some wraparound supportive services, allows them to stabilize a little bit. So I think there needs to be this interim step, and the city has basically invented that with our network of safe rest villages. Very important. I think that is a model that we already see kind of being replicated throughout the nation. I really think that we need to scale it here. Now, at the same time, if you are homeless because you've fallen on some hard luck, you've lost your job or something like that, and you're just ready to move in, then boom, housing first is a great way to go. But I think we have to recognize that there are many people are houseless for many different reasons. We have to meet people where they are, and we have to find a continuum of options for them. And that has been, frankly, missing from Portland for far too long. And Portland is not going to change until we provide that continuum of services, because the person who is in a fentanyl haze in a tent across the street from the downtown library, is not going to last long in an apartment if you just hand them the key and say, there you go. Right. We see this over and over again.
Right. Yeah. It's certainly been a revolving door on that issue. One thing that you have done as city commissioner over your time is you've been involved in a lot of initiatives, and you were talking about public transportation, environmental services side. You oversaw PBOT. You oversaw the wastewater treatment plant. You've been a part of some Water Bureau initiatives. You faced a little criticism over the bike lane initiatives, but I think
just a little bit.
That's all right. How does that experience, how's that going to mold your plan moving forward if you were to become mayor?
Well, sure. Well, number one, I've been in charge of literally the largest bureaus in the city. I think my portfolio accounts for about a third of the employees in the city, half the city's budget, and 95% of the assets. So on a day-to-day basis, I know what it means to run the city and to run it well. It's also the case in all three of those bureaus. You know, um, there are hot button issues. Bike lanes are one example, water filtration plants, it goes on. I recognize that we need to really pull people together and, identify where we're trying to go. And I think one of our challenges here is sometimes we get very focused on where we are today. I think one of the things that I encourage people to remember is that you're never done building a city. It's in constant evolution. So we kind of think about, the services that we need today. Like you need to be able to get your kid from your house to their school, maybe on a bike. So you want that infrastructure there. But at the same time, we got to think about the fact that Portland will continue to grow and prosper for many years. I expect many more people to live in this community in 10, 20, 30 years. We need to plan for housing and transportation needs and water wastewater treatment plans for a much larger city too. So I'm trying to get us to, number one, meet the moment, but also plan for the future. And you got to do that by bringing people together and figuring out how we can accommodate both everyone's shared interest and to also think about the future.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought bringing people together because that kind of leads to my next
Yeah.
question. There's been sort of a reticence, at least on the county side, not necessarily the city side, of really bringing in public-private partnerships or taking into account a lot of these private viewpoints and private industry.
Yeah.
What's your view on that and bringing in private organizations to help solve some of these problems that the city's facing?
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I'll tell you, I'm pro-business and I'm pro-labor, and I don't see a tension between that. I think a difference between me and some other folks in this race is, I actually think the private sector is a means for building wealth and prosperity in Portland, especially for, frankly, people of color. Nonprofits are great. I have a little bit of a background in the nonprofit community, but one of the things I am really proud of during my time on council is I made it easier for small businesses that are owned by women and people of color to bid on city jobs and take their little small firms and grow them into larger firms. And actually, while we also engage them in the work of building the city of the future, I think that's how we really build wealth. I've seen it make an enormous transformation, both in our economy and to actually building wealth in our community. I'll tell you, I believe that this is literally true. If you take a look at the way we've opened up the contracting space in public works during my time on council, we've done more to build African-American wealth in Oregon than anyone has done in the history of Oregon. That's partly because we got some mega projects going on, and that's partly because we've just kind of made the bidding process fair. That's the kind of Portland that I really want us to lean into, and that's the kind of mayor I'm going to lean into. Now, don't get me wrong, nonprofits are incredibly important, although I think a lot of the nonprofit work that we do also really fits more cleanly with the county's portfolio. But I'm really here to build the city that we need today and the city that our kids are going to need in the future. And
Yeah.
the private sector is just core to that. And I also want to recognize, because I hear it every day, we have made it far too hard to start and grow a business in Portland. I hear it from small business owners and people who occupy tall business towers that trying to start a business in Portland or even just do business in Portland is suffocating, given, the bureaucracy, the cost, and the quality of living. And this is one of the reasons why Portland is right on the verge of, frankly, a potential doom cycle. I think only the second time in our city's 174-year history we've lost population.
Right.
That tells you something. If we've been around since the 1880s or so, and it's only been one other time that we've actually shrunk. And one of my fears, and we'll find out whether this will play out to be true in the coming weeks, is we'll get our fiscal forecast for the city. And I'm confident that will not be a strong forecast. And it's entirely possible it might be a disastrous forecast. And one of the reasons why it's disastrous is because families and businesses are fleeing this town. And I'll tell you, there are lots of macro issues there, but because I'm the transportation commissioner, I interact with a lot of our partners because, all roads lead to all the other roads. So I spend a lot of time over working with my partners in Vancouver, which is booming. And they are literally eating our lunch, and good for them in many ways. They have set up a regulatory environment, which I think encourages folks to set down roots. And we're seeing the difference there. Go over there and take a look at the number of cranes that dot the Vancouver skies, and take a look, then turn to the south and see how many cranes you can count.
Yeah.
That's not good.
That's not good. That's not good at all. And that leads me to another question in regards to housing, because, a lot of people are pro-housing, right? We want to increase supply and hopefully decrease, rents. Governor Kotek had an ambitious plan. I don't think she's going to come close to it.
Yeah.
And certainly Portland isn't helping. According to the most recent, Portland's only going to have about 500 permitted units this year, which would be the lowest since the great financial crisis. Why do you think that is, and how do we turn that tide to increase housing so that we can maybe unburden some of this?
Well, it comes down to a couple of things. Number one, to be fair, the cost of capital has gone up a lot. On the other hand, there are places, Florida and Texas have the opposite problem, where they have probably overbuilt it in recent years. So we cannot all blame this on interest rates.
Or even Vancouver, like you said.
Or even, as we said, just across the river. So that is one issue. Another issue is we all know that building in Portland is just too expensive and too complicated for literally my entire time on city council. One of the initiatives I've led is permitting reform. We all know it takes literally years to pull a permit to build even a basic building here in Portland. That is driving folks away, and that is completely unsustainable. And frankly, one of the other things which is really challenging us is, for folks who are thinking about investing in Portland, let's say you want to build a multifamily unit, but you're in the multifamily business and you build all over the nation, maybe even all over the world. Given Portland's reputation, do you want to invest in building 100 new units in Portland, or do you want to invest in 100 new units in some place like Salt Lake City, where they're not having the same issues around crime, homelessness, and instability? Right. That's what I am hearing. There is some good news here. I tell you, if you take a look at polling and even talk to human beings, I'm surprised and delighted at the number of times when I hear Portlanders say, the city looks pretty good now. And I just got a text from a friend last night who was, I think, downtown with her, I don't want to say elderly, but mature parents. And they were delighted to see that the streets were active even on a Sunday night. They were comparing it to what San Francisco is like right now, and Portland is competing well in that space. On the other hand, as a guy who closely tracks the number of tents we have in the city, and the number of especially violent crimes that we have in the city, I understand why people are afraid to come downtown and reluctant to invest in our city. On the other hand, I will tell you, I've been around Portland long enough. Portland has booms and busts, and Portland will always be okay in the long run. Our people are great. We live in a beautiful place. We live in a strategic place between, Seattle and San Francisco. We are truly at a crossroads. So, our bones and our fundamentals are good, but we got to get better at the basics, and I think if we can, house the folks who are sleeping on our streets, if we can do something about the mental health crisis that we have out there, if we can clean up the graffiti, if we can stop this culture of vandalism, and we can make it easier and cheaper and faster to pull a permit to build something in Portland, we are going to boom again.
Yeah. Do you think inclusionary zoning has been a net positive for the city?
Well, I think we actually have evidence on this. I think you can make the argument that in some places it has been relatively successful, and in other places it seems to be dysfunctional. That is one of the spaces that I will look into. I'll tell you, I have a couple of thoughts. One of the things which is just true, especially for those folks who are feeling burdened by the cost of rent, one of the ways we get out of that is to build more. And I very much want to create a culture and a regulatory structure here in Portland where we're just building more affordable housing. I think one of the other things that is just kind of true, and that will bring down your rents. That'll make it possible for my kids who, I apologize, you can see walking back and forth out here as they come home from school. Eventually,
That's
I
all
hope
right.
they can get a condo here.
I know how it is. I've got kids too.
Yeah. So we need to, so I think we have to create a culture of building more densely. The other fact, and we haven't fully come to terms with this as a city, is that affordable housing is a misnomer. There is no housing cost. What housing costs? You got land, you got equipment, you got the supplies, you got labor. Really affordable housing is about subsidized housing. And I think especially for highly affordable housing, for folks who are really struggling, let's say you're elderly, let's say you're disabled, something like that, we're going to have to make investments in bringing that kind of housing online. Frankly, and I'll give Commissioner Rubio kind of some credit on this. We've gone through this experiment with the housing bond where we brought on a lot of affordable housing. And the dollar value, while still kind of shocking at some level, at least it's actually relatively affordable. I think we need to make investments in highly affordable housing on the one end, and then on the other end of the spectrum, just really make it easier to build more. And if I do that, I think that we can bring Portland back into balance. And also I encourage us, for folks who haven't, who are still learning the community, in many ways, my political career started out in East Portland, out in Park Rose. Those are beautiful neighborhoods, incredible opportunities there. We still have space, and we got lots of homes that actually still have really good bones there. I do hope that the development community explores the entire city. I do think that we have a little bit of an obsession to focus in on the urban core. I think that, frankly, the city's going to be easier to run and healthier when we spread our prosperity and our development out to all four quadrants.
Just shift gears a little bit.
Yeah.
You had sort of mentioned crime and safety a bit. Right now, the Portland Police Department has approximately 880-ish sworn officers. It's on a per capita level, one of the lowest in the U.S. in terms of staffing levels. Some say we should have north of 1,000, maybe even 1,200 sworn officers. What level do you think we should be at, and what steps do you think you can take as mayor to help get us to that point?
Sure. Well, first I would say I wish we had 880 police officers. I think it's about 801 at the last time I checked. And this is one of the reasons why Portland is so challenged and people don't feel safe, and sometimes you're not safe. I'll tell you, in addition to my infrastructure responsibilities, I used to be the guy in charge of 911. I think a lot of people misunderstand the services that we do there. You should think of 911 as basically being air traffic controllers. So we have a set of demands for services, for ambulance, police, Portland Street Response, and then we have the assets that we have on the ground. One of the things which is just absolutely true is, if you're mystified by why you call 911 and you need a cop and a cop doesn't show up, or they show up 4 hours after the crisis, it's because we literally don't have the bodies, we don't have the cars. And you're exactly right. I think you'd expect a city our size, frankly, to have about 1,200 police officers. I think we're about at 801. I very much want to see us grow that. 800, we would actually be in a very different world if we had 885 police officers right now. I think that's where I kind of want to get, and believe I can get us there by the end of my first year and a half or so. Remember, it takes about a year and a half to kind of train police officers. One of the things that's really different after my 4 years in office compared to where we were before, if you remember back to where we were in 2020, cops were leaving the city in droves, and we couldn't recruit at all. And the reasons for that are not mysterious at all. Number one, given the lack of support that police officers were getting from their elected officials, why would you do this incredibly difficult work? So in my last campaign, the first time I went out, and this is very surprising for an African-American man to do at a time when there were protests on the street, it's about racial justice, but I took the endorsement from the police bureau. And I took the endorsement from the police bureau because I know that one of the things that Black people care about and is important to the health of cities is basic policing services. When I go out and talk to folks who look like me, certainly everyone wants to have a public safety system that treats everyone fairly, and that is truly important to me. I got a 15-year-old black kid and a 14-year-old black kid, and it is incredibly important that they are treated fairly by the police bureau. On the other hand, when I need to call 911 because something dangerous and scary is happening at my front door, I need a cop to come. And I live very much in the real world in Portland, where I do sure and the conversation that I've tried to bring to council. And I will tell you, the culture we have on council today is fundamentally different from the culture that we had in 2020. We've had that hard conversation. We I think it might have been last week, council voted to stand up our new Police Accountability Commission. This will be a civilian group that will look into situations where police, allegedly kind of violated people's rights. That's very important for the accountability of our system. At the same time, I'm just going to be quite clear. By the end of my first year and a half as mayor, if I don't have 885 police officers, I will not have succeeded in what I am aiming to do. And I will tell you, I'm optimistic that we can get there. We have to do a better job at recruitment, but recruitment has turned around. We were dead in the water 4 years ago. Now Portland is recruiting, I think, better than most police departments in the nation. One of the other things that we have to do a better job of is actually retention. Police officers can retire relatively young in their lives. And I think largely because of the way I've managed to shift the conversation since I've been on council, we're actually seeing police officers who have the option of retiring choosing to stick around longer. And another thing which I hope Portlanders recognize is that I hope every Portlander actually does this at some point in the next year or two. Every couple of weeks downtown, we're swearing in a new class of police recruits. I encourage you to go down and sit in the audience for one of those. They actually happen early in the morning, and they're really amazing because these are young people who choose a life in law enforcement, and they're choosing a life in law enforcement in Portland because they know that Portland is inventing the future of what public safety looks like. If you choose to sign up to be a cop in Portland, it's not because you want to bash people in the head with a billy club. It's because you want to kind of reimagine what policing looks like for the 21st century. These people are young, they're diverse, they're progressive. I'm incredibly proud of them, and I'm incredibly grateful for them to choosing a life of public service, here in the city of Roses.
Yeah. And you're right. And just talking about that public safety issue, obviously people of color are disproportionately affected by, violent crimes and so forth. And particularly we've seen an increase in the Northeast side, right?
Yeah.
Many say there's a lack of cameras. There's a lack of, police response. Where do you see Portland's failure on that? And where do you hope to rectify it as mayor?
Well, the size of our policing bureau, we need more cops. I also want to emphasize we need, cops are not the solution to every problem.
Sure.
So we can make more investments in violence prevention programs. One of the things I'm incredibly proud of is I think in the last year, we've managed to bring down gun violence amongst, frankly, Black men by about a third. And that's because we're progressively leaning into folks. We're talking to folks, frankly, before bullets are flying and saying, hey, listen, we kind of do a targeted intervention. So we reach out to folks and say, hey, you are highly likely to be, because of your lifestyle, you are highly likely to be the victim of a gun crime or to commit a gun crime. And we don't want that for your future, and you don't want that for your future. So we'll work with you to give you the tools and the support you need to kind of step out of this lifestyle. That's had an enormous influence in actually making Portland safer. I'm incredibly proud of it. It's the kind of work that we used to do a couple of decades ago. It's the kind of work that places like Boston have had success in. So we need to lean into that for sure.
Right. Well, and I think we have an opportunity now, right? Because we've got some stability with Chief Day, and we've got a new district attorney, Nathan Vasquez, coming online at the beginning of the year. So hopefully there's an opportunity to sort of get a wrangle on some of these issues, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll tell you, certainly I'm really optimistic about Portland. It truly is a new generation. At the city, we have, with the new form of government and the city administrator and frankly, a more empowered mayor, we're going to have much more coordinated services. The county, I think, is where the city was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where they are realizing that they need to do things differently. And I see them moving in the right direction. Incredible leadership is coming up through these council races. I'm very excited. I will tell everyone, do not sleep on these Multnomah County Commission races too. Those folks have some of the most important responsibilities in the city. This is truly a new day. I was looking at some economic reports. I think Oregon is starting more new businesses in the last year than I think anyone else in the nation. So things are looking up. We're partly moving up quickly because we fell down fast, but we have the tools in place. But if we continue our focus on getting better and frankly focusing in on the basics, I think Portland can be prosperous and the jewel of the Pacific Northwest in a very short amount of time.
Yeah. Well, I think there's sort of a turning of tides. I think people starting to see it at the street level with some of it. Hopefully with the dedication of a city administrator, like you were talking about, that'll help a lot with these services. Do you think the size of the city administrator's office is the right size in terms of the different bureaus? Do you think it should be a little smaller and consolidated? What's your view on that?
I'll tell you, and I'll be transparent and frank with you. I am concerned with the growing administrative costs that come with the city administrator. We're sending up this literally kind of new branch of government in many ways. While we have not cut anything, we've moved council from 4 folk to 12. We're setting up a new city administrator. I do believe that over time we're going to become more efficient and we'll start to pay for ourselves. I'll tell you, in year one, it's not been my experience that this is a cost-saving measure. I can look out at years. I don't see that either. And frankly, I think within a couple of weeks, I'm going to get a financial report that tells me that our economic outlook for our next fiscal year is looking tight, maybe even worse than what we had this current year. And there are going to have to be some cuts. And I do think that we might have to take a different approach to staffing the city administrator's office. Frankly, I think that's going to mean moving some analysts and whatnot from the bureaus into the city administrator space, as opposed to hiring more. Like, we are literally at the point in terms of our budgeting and our resources where we are going to have to cut someplace.
Yeah.
So
Well, yeah, and because you can't, we're already the highest tax rate in the nation.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can raise taxes even more on a burdened and drive more business and people away from the county. So you do have to make cuts. Where do you see a chance to make cuts in the budget?
Well, here I have a couple of focus. Number one, I want to make sure that our public-facing services, the folks who are out there responding to your noise complaints, responding to your 911 calls, the folks who, the cops out there who are doing your work, our technicians who address our broken pump stations remain on the jobs. Frankly, it has to be in the bureaucracy. And I think this is actually also an opportunity, I think, for folks who work in that space. I kind of work in that space myself. I think that we need to, especially at the city administrator level and the leadership level, really reimagine how we organize our work and become more efficient. Frankly, one of the things we never talk about at the city, and it even freaks people out when I try to have these conversations in City Hall, is we have to become more efficient. We have to do more with less. I actually think the charter reform is an incredible opportunity. If you're going to literally restructure your organization, this is an opportunity to really think about, hey, if we were just kind of start over from scratch, would we organize things the way we do it today? And the answer is just no. I will also point out that this is a really exciting times in terms of technological opportunities that are out
Sure.
there. You got AI out there, over in infrastructure. I'm using AI to get a better sense of where we have paved land and where, what parts of Portland are not paved. We're using AI to do a better job of distributing aid to folks who need help paying their utility bills. I think that it would not be that challenging for the city to become 4% better a year after year, which is kind of what the metric I try to achieve. If we can kind of consistently become 4% better, number one, you're going to see us. The 4% is enough that you can really see the difference, and then it just compounds over time. And that is a culture and a goal that frankly doesn't really exist in local government right now. It's one of the unique visions that I will bring to City Hall should I be chosen to be your next mayor.
Yeah. Speaking of combining bureaucracies, or maybe cutting out some fat, there have been some areas like Indianapolis, Nashville, Miami that have done some successful city-county operation mergers. With all the changes that's going on structurally, do you think, well, first off, would you support a merger of the city and county? And second, if you do you think the time is getting to that point where maybe this is a good time to do that?
Again, let me be frank with you. I see the advantages, and one of the things that drives me crazy is, I was trying to clap when here, the city is my left hand and the county is my right hand, and we need to clap, but I got no control or I have relatively little control over what the county does. I have some influence there. I will also tell you, I think the county is just a profoundly broken institution. And you should be careful, if you're going to chase a car, be careful if you actually expect to catch it, because it will be a lot of things that need to get fixed at the county. And frankly, even priorities are just the place to start. We have a different view on service delivery, and we're also in fundamentally different businesses. Like the city is basically in a direct service business. I have employees, my employees go out in the world and they do stuff. The county, and this is one of the reasons why the city and the county are different. The county essentially manages a bunch of contracts, and that has its own dynamics. I think it explains why the county is, frankly, who the county is responsive to, and frankly, some of the challenges that they have there. I think at some point soon, I hope a visionary leader comes and reforms the county in some fundamental ways. I'm not sure if their business model is right. It's one of the reasons why I'm looking very closely at who gets elected to serve on the county board of commissioners moving forward. But frankly, one of the bad habits we have at Portland, inside Portland City Hall, is keeping our eye on the ball. Let's get good at the stuff that we have a core responsibility for doing. And moving forward, there might be some space for cooperation and collaboration and merger with the counties too. But I'm afraid that we would sink our entire ship if we just embraced that right away.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, especially with so many other moving parts, right?
Yeah. And I will tell you, and here, this is an unpopular thing, or something no one, I think, in City Hall really wants to say to the public right now. We'll wake up on January 1st, 2025 to a new form of government. But this is going to be more than just flipping a switch, and we're going to be on the other side of this. I expect there to be, frankly, certainly 4 or 5
growing pains.
Yeah, growing pains, and there's going to be iterations. Sure. We're doing something wrong if we don't learn anything over the next 2 or 3 years about this new form of government that doesn't require us to re-examine our priors and make some adjustments. I really want the city to focus in on, managing this particular moment. And that's what I'm going to be trying to, remind my colleagues on council of. That as a leader, that's one of the things I'll be trying to do as mayor. Frankly, I think a lot of times folks who work in City Hall tend to kind of point over to the county, partly because their own problems it's much easier and frankly more popular to kind of point to other people's problems before you solve our own staffing problems. Yeah.
And you've been in city council city council for a while. And so as this new structure of government is changing over, how will that role in particular change? Do you think it'll be for the more positive? Because now we've got sort of more per capita representation, or do you think it's going to be a little more difficult to wrangle those council members together?
Yes. No, one thing which is true is, we've had 4 people on council plus a mayor for 117 years. Our population has increased like tenfold in that time. We are way more diverse than we were when we started the commission form of government. Heck, we are profoundly more diverse than when I was a kid. So having more voices on council, I think, makes a lot of sense. And one of the things, although I love it, one of the reasons why I'm a commissioner today is that we've had this very unique form of government where your members of council also have just executive power and function. As a guy who just loves making roads work, making sewers work, making sure people got clean water, that's profoundly satisfying to me. It's probably not the best way to kind of set up a city to deliver basic services. So,
Right.
council will be more of a place where we think about what our North Stars are. I think that's going to be quite healthy. At the same time, I will tell you, there's only so much that we can do. What the next council is will be determined by who gets elected to the next council and how they go about organizing themselves. We are working awfully hard to make sure that those folks have a soft landing. They're going to have offices. We have proposals for how they go. I think even last week or the week before, we kind of developed a proposal for what committee structures might look like. But, the next council could decide we don't want to have committees. I don't think that they're going to do that, but a lot of decisions will be made by the folks who are running. And I'll tell you, I think we literally got 118 people running for council. And I've met a heck of a lot of them. And there are a lot of great people out. And I think that's going to be ultimately really healthy for them. They are also going to be, frankly, our founding fathers and mothers for what Portland 2.0 looks like. And if I get the privilege of serving as our mayor, I look forward to kind of sitting at those council tables and in that council chamber with my colleagues on council to figure out what democracy looks like in Portland in the 21st century.
Great. Well, we appreciate your outlook on that. And before we go, is there anything else that our members should know about you and your approach to the mayor's office?
Well, I'll tell you, I think a lot of you know me pretty well. I've been around for a while, and I'm pragmatic. I'm pro-business. I'm also pro-labor. I believe that our best days are ahead. I will also tell you, my door is always open. I believe that the way you rule a city like Portland is to bring people together, build a table, put your best ideas together about how we can all move forward. I encourage you if you want to learn more, please go to my website, mingusmapps.com. And I will also tell you, I know that most of the people listening to this podcast are going to be relatively sophisticated, but still give yourself a little bit of time to study the ballot. It's going to look very different from anything you've seen before. I don't think you can knock this one out in like 5 minutes over a cup of coffee. I haven't seen the voter's pamphlet, a guide yet, but I suspect it'll be about a quarter-inch thick. Time and choose carefully. This is an exciting moment. Although I'm running for mayor, I also encourage you to take a look at those county races too, because they're awfully important.
Mingus, thanks so much for your time. Thanks so much for being on and being a supporter of RPC.
Absolutely.
And good luck in the upcoming mayoral race.
Oh, thank you. And thank you so much for this conversation. If you ever want to chat again, please reach out. We'll make some time.
We really appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.